Hey everyone, it's Peter. Welcome to this Good Friday edition of Compass Point. Before I say the message that I want to share with you today, I just want to say something about this Sunday's message, Easter Sunday. We're going to try something new. As you go to our YouTube channel and watch Easter's message on Sunday morning, we're going to have a live premiere at 10 o'clock. So if you go to the YouTube channel before 10 o'clock, you'll see a countdown leading up to the live premiere of Sunday's message. Our hope is to have a sense that as we watch Easter's message on Sunday, that we're doing that together as a community, waiting and watching the video together. Of course, anytime after 10 o'clock when you go on YouTube, you can watch the video, but it will be great to watch it with a sense that we're doing that together. And now for today's compass point. I'm calling it Death Wears a Crown. A bit of a play on words, because this coronavirus that we're hearing so much about is named coronavirus because of the way it resembles a crown. You've probably seen computerized or magnified images of the coronavirus on your computer screens or on television. You see the round central sphere of the virus, and then protruding from that are these protein spikes, very ornate, that have crown-like features to them. It's why the coronavirus is called the coronavirus. Corona is the Latin word for crown. And when you think about crowns, you think about power, you think about authority, and you think about the influence that people who wear a crown have globally, or certainly nationally. The coronavirus has that kind of influence. We see that in the growing numbers of people who've passed away from this virus. That's the ultimate kind of death that we think about as we reflect on the massive impact that this virus is having globally. But there are so many other kinds of death. There's a global economy that is crippling. There are schools that are closed, jobs that have ended, our way of life that is no longer what it was. All of these kinds of dying enable us, especially today, to reflect on the Lord's dying and what that means for us and how that gives us hope. It's interesting that when the Bible talks about Satan or the powers of evil, the imagery, the language used there is very graphic, very strong. The Apostle Paul refers to Satan as the god of this age. He talks about how our spiritual warfare is not against flesh and blood, but against rulers and principalities, authorities, the powers of this dark world. Even Jesus referred to Satan as the prince of this world twice in John's Gospel. So these images convey the power of sin and death. Now, what is our hope in the face of that? Well, especially today on this Good Friday, we can take incredible hope in knowing that our Lord Jesus has done something powerful for us. What is the thing that we hear about a lot during this pandemic that will give us some measure of hope and optimism? It's a vaccine. The brightest and best medical and scientific minds all over the world, I'm sure, are working feverishly to try to develop a vaccine. You know how vaccinations work. We've had them ourselves. We've given them to our children to protect them, to protect ourselves. Vaccinations work because a small, manageable dose of a deadly disease or crippling kind of affliction is actually given to us. So polio or measles are injected into our bodies, but in very small doses, so that our bodies can recognize them and resist them. We develop antibodies that enable us to fight and defeat those viruses, so that if ever a larger exposure is to happen, we've developed enough resistance to them. We're inoculated. Now hold on to that thought and think about how the power of death is also undone by death itself. The death of Jesus is what cures our dying. It's what undoes the power of death. It's true, death wears a crown, but Jesus also wore a crown of thorns, a symbol, an image that suggests all of the brokenness and pain and curse and trouble of this fallen world. Jesus took all of that on himself. He exposed himself to all the powers of evil and death. He did this for us. And so while it's true that death wears a crown, Jesus also wears a crown, a far greater crown. Let me refer again to those verses in John's Gospel where Jesus talks about the prince of this world. Reading the full verses will give us a sense of how, while it's true that death has a crown, the crown of Jesus is greater. John 12, verse 31, now the prince of this world will be driven out. John 14, verse 30, the prince of this world is coming, Jesus says. He has no hold on me. It speaks to the power of death, but it speaks to the greater power of Jesus, who wore a crown of thorns, and as we will celebrate on Easter Sunday, wears a crown of life, a crown of glory. I love the way the book of Revelation depicts Jesus as a mighty warrior who has conquered and defeated all his enemies, including the powers of sin and death. Revelation 19 is especially beautiful for us to think about on this Good Friday. It pictures Jesus as a conquering hero riding on a white horse, leading the armies of heaven behind him. He's majestic, he's glorious. King of kings and Lord of lords is his name. And he wears many crowns on his head. Yes, death wears a crown. We know that all too well. But Jesus, our Lord, wears a crown, a greater crown, a crown of life, a crown of glory. His crown defeats even the power of death. It's what makes this Friday good. His dying is what cures our dying. His cross is our only hope. Thanks so much for watching this edition of Compass Point. I hope you are well. Go in the strength and peace of God.